I was 9 years old, and out of the corner of my eye, out of nowhere, a car comes and crosses right in front of us. We hit the car, and all this debris comes down on the dome. The train comes to a stop. Everybody in the car was killed, and then my sister took her life in 1980, carbon monoxide poisoning. There were other losses, including the death of my son Stephen in 2011 of an accidental heroin overdose. When I started writing fiction, it's important to write what you know, and so I knew tragedy and loss, and so I went there. And so what I'm really trying to do is to help a person tap into that inner well of creativity that I think we all have. And that, I think, is where the healing can come from as well. You know, you already have whatever it takes to get through this. And it's just a matter of finding it. But in order to find it, you just have to be patient and mindful.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Broken Beautiful Me, where we gather in our sacred space for honest conversations and soul-deep healing. I'm Kelly Buckley, your host, and each story we share and honor is a gentle reminder that even in our broken parts, we are beautifully becoming through hope, gratitude, and the quiet strength of resilience. Today, I am so fortunate to welcome John DeDakis. He is a writing coach and an award-winning author, and a former CNN senior copy editor for the Emmy and Peabody Award-winning news program, The Situation Room with Wolf Blitzer. During his 45 years in journalism, 25 at CNN, he's interviewed presidents, Reagan and Carter, and famous people like Alfred Hitchcock. He's covered the White House and has been tear-gassed covering a riot. DeDakis is the author of 6 traditionally published novels in the Lark Chadwick mystery suspense thriller series. In his most recent novel, Enemies Domestic, Lark is a White House press secretary forced to make her extremely personal abort or not to abort decision in a highly toxic and polarized political fishbowl when abortion is a crime and a dictator becomes president.
It could never happen.
DeDakis is a podcaster, one-on-one writing coach, manuscript editor, and regularly teaches novel writing at literary centers and writers' conferences nationwide and abroad. And he is also a drummer in his free time. I had to throw that in because I listened to you on YouTube this morning, and you are really good.
No.
You really are. So welcome.
Well, what you saw was just a very short little clip, and it was rock and roll. I'm trying to learn jazz drumming, and that's not easy.
Jazz drumming is a whole new beast, I would bet. Hey, I remember watching a guy in Chicago. My husband and I went to a jazz club in Chicago, and it was like it was part of his pulse. It was like it was an extension of his circulate. You know what I mean? It was unbelievable.
I do.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it's uncanny. There's a lot of improv involved, and that's when the magic happens. And I haven't learned how to tap into that as effectively as I have as a writer.
Well, I mean, there's still loads of time. Keep practicing, right?
Well, fair enough.
So I just want to jump in and get started and let you kind of speak to your story a little bit, because your life, you've had an incredible career in journalism. You're an award-winning novelist, but along the way, you've really faced profound personal heartbreak. And that includes the death by suicide of your sister, as well as the loss of your son, Stephen. And so I'm wondering if we can start off by you speaking to those experiences and, really with the career milestones and the devastating loss, how did that shape the person that you are today and how you approach your writing?
That's a wonderful question. I hope you get a chance to ask a follow-up, because this will go on forever. No, I'm going to try to keep it simple and short. In fact, the I like the way you framed it in terms of how it shaped me, because it actually the profound loss or the trauma goes back even farther than that. When I was 9 years old, I was on a train in the dome car in the middle of the night, looking down the tracks as the train goes hurtling through northern Illinois. And I was just kind of my nose pressed against the window, watching the rails go by. And out of the corner of my eye, I was 9 years old, and out of the corner of my eye, out of nowhere, a car comes and crosses right in front of us. We hit the car, and all this debris comes down on the dome. The train comes to a stop, and we everybody in the car was killed. And it turns out one of the people who died of the three was an 11-year-old boy,
Oh,
just about my age. And so, 9 years old is a young age to be aware of your mortality.
yes.
And so I think that shaped it. And ironically, my first novel deals with, in a sense, reconstructing, that crash. And I built a story around it where my protagonist is the survivor of a car train collision that happened in my case, it happened in Chadwick, Illinois. So I named my protagonist Lark Chadwick. And so right from the very beginning, writing was a catharsis. And then my sister took her life in 1980, carbon monoxide poisoning. But I still wasn't. I was a journalist. I wasn't really writing fiction, although some people critical of the mainstream media would say, "Well, yes, you were." But but so when I started writing fiction, it's important to write what you know. And so I knew tragedy and loss. And so I went there and I brought it to life, so to speak, and put it in the very first chapter of the very first novel. I was on the scene that day when my sister took her life. And so I made that. I hardly had to change a detail. But with fiction, you get to embellish and go beyond it. So but as it's turned out, I've written 6 novels, and all of them have, because it's a series. My protagonist, Lark Chadwick, is right from the beginning dealing with grief and loss,
Mhm.
and so that continues to inform her life going forward. And the first novel was published 20 years ago, and in that amount of time, there were other losses, including the death of my son Stephen in 2011 of an accidental heroin overdose. And so the collateral damage surrounding that shows up in book 4, which is A Bullet in the Chamber, which has heroin as a sort of a subplot. So I think that the experiences shape the writing, and this is probably grist for the conversation, it also affects you as a person.
Mhm.
And writing, one of the things I tell my writing students is the better you know yourself as a person, the better your writing will be, because you'll be coming from a place of authenticity and personal vulnerability. And so those experiences can't help but form you and impact you. But it all depends, I think, on how you process it. I think a lot of people anesthetize the pain and try to pretend that it doesn't hurt or isn't there. And yet it's corrosive, and it does manifest itself in other, sometimes dysfunctional ways. So I think there's a healthy way of dealing with grief and loss, and I think that there's an unhealthy way of dealing with it. Um, and so I think that's one of the reasons why you have this program.
Do you help people who are navigating difficult issues? I mean, you teach writing. Do you help them if they're navigating and give them kind of not necessarily a map, but some guidance about what could prompt you, what's gonna put you um, in the right headspace to write through your pain, or do you just kind of let them?
That's another really thoughtful question. More often than not, I'm really trying to help them with the nuts and bolts of writing. I mean, I'm not a psychologist. I don't have that kind of professional training. I think it's the psychologists and the professionals who can really help you with that headspace, help you process things and work through things and give you the kind of feedback that you need.
Mhm.
Um, I suppose, I mean, my purpose is not to help a person deal with grief, but I think that's a byproduct
Yeah.
of the writing process. And so I think that's sort of an inadvertent result that I think really what it comes down to is a person needs to help themselves. And that I believe writing is a catharsis. I think writing is therapeutic. And so what I'm really trying to do is to help a person tap into that inner well of creativity that I think we all have. And that I think is where the healing can come from as well. Um, as you address the issues of whatever it is you're writing about.
Hmm. For you personally, did you find, and this is just me being curious as a person who really gravitated towards writing after the loss of my son. Did you
Mm.
find that when you experience a loss, like the loss of a child, I just felt so fearless, I guess, in my writing, almost as
I,
if to say, I have I have nothing. You can't take anything else away from me. So I'm going to be completely and brutally honest in what I'm describing here because I kind of wrote about my journey. And there's one particular story because I had Stephen when I was in high school, and I had never talked about that story before, and I put it in the book. And even my best friend was like, "Really?" But I had this fearlessness I feel because of my loss and my grief.
yeah,
What's your experience with that?
it's the same. And you said it basically the same way I would. And that is, once the worst has happened, there's nothing, there are going to be other losses that will be awful. But that, that tops the charts. And so we live life being afraid of bad things that'll happen. And once you've experienced that and have gotten through it, then that puts everything else in perspective. And it does give you a sense of fearlessness, a sense of confidence, I think, going forward, because you've already had the worst happen and you survived.
Mhm.
And so, there is that sense of fearlessness. And yet, ironically, I think fear is part of the grief process because I think that, at least in the initial stages, the fear is, how can life be the same? How can life ever be better without that person
Right.
anymore? And so envisioning the future without that person is fearful.
Mhm.
and and so I think addressing the fear, I think, is one of, I think, an initial step that's required in moving through the grief process. That's my hunch. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that, uh, and I still have those moments of fear all those years later, I think, where I am contemplating something, a milestone for our family, and I still have that little twinge that I feel. And I have learned to kind of become comfortable sitting with my feelings and not run away from them. I used to be a very good runner from my feelings. Um,
Uh,
but
hmm.
I tend to say, okay, well, why is that bubbling up now? Why is and usually I'll go out in my garden because that's usually where I can find a little bit of wisdom. Is nature usually helps me, but I think that
Let me ask you a quick question. What enabled you to uh, stop running from the fears? What was that pivotal moment?
Um, it just wasn't working out for me. I know that's a very simplistic answer, but like I was stuck. And as long as I kept on that fear wheel, that hamster wheel of fear, I was never going to become unstuck. And I would say, honestly, a lot of my motivation, especially in the early days of my grief, focused on my younger son, Brendan. So he was
Right.
11 when his brother died. And so I still had responsibilities. And boy, he deserved to have a happy life. So I had to get it together. So
Right.
I think really if I was to look at the true motivation, it would be my motherly love for Brendan.
Huh.
Mhm.
Do you think, forgive me for turning the tables on you, but we have Stevens in
We
common, and they were
do.
both in their early 20s. So, and you went through this in 2009, and my Stephen died in 2011. So you've been dealing with this longer. And so my question then is, in your experience, do women deal with this better than men?
I would not say that it's better. I would say it's different.
In
Um,
what way?
so I feel like our experience was my husband was wanted to be a problem solver. And so early on in our grief, we agreed that we were going to talk things through, even if we weren't on the same page. And I said, "You can't fix this. This is not something that's fixable, and
Yeah.
and and that's okay. I don't want you to carry the burden of feeling inadequate because you can't fix this. Because no one can fix
Right.
this.
That's right.
We just have to walk through it, and we have to do it together. So one is not necessarily better than the other. He gave me a lot of grace to grieve in my own way, which was in my pajamas writing. Right.
Yeah.
So he showed me a lot of grace. He gave me a lot of space. He understood when I couldn't talk through things. I give him a lot of credit for his patience with me. I'm not sure if I would have had that same patience with him. I can admit that.
Hmm.
Um,
Okay. And you're still together?
Oh, yes. Yeah, we are. Yeah. And very much I would be doing none of this without him. Really, truly.
Yeah.
He's my biggest cheerleader and I'm very fortunate that way. So I feel like women, we internalize a lot. We carry our emotions with us. There's something about, especially with the loss of a child, um, that there's just that maternal aspect that it's really hard to put into words to anybody, even another woman. And so you've nurtured this relationship right from the time where someone was in your belly. Um, and so grieving what you had dreamt about when you were pregnant, it's just so complex. I can't even really put that into words how complex that is for a mom.
You mentioned the difference, and there was an experience that Cindy and I had in the weeks after Stephen died, where we were in the car together, and we had a CD on, and it was Carole King's Tapestry album,
Oh,
and the song came on. I think it's called "Home Again." Sometimes I wonder if I'm ever going to make it home again. And Cindy hit the button to make it advance to the next track. And I said, "Why did you do that?" And she said, "Because every time I hear it, it makes me cry." It was the same song that when I heard it, I would play it over and over again because it made me cry.
oh,
Same song, same emotional reaction, different way of dealing with it. And that
yeah,
was one of those light bulb moments where I realized this is going to be different for each of us.
it is. And I think that's such a great example. Just a very simple little little thing, but two completely different approaches. I think the thing, if for anybody out there who's listening and they, are navigating what we have navigated, I think the thing would be is to be patient with each other and to recognize that you're going to walk this path a little differently, but just remember to always come back together at the end of the day and check in with each other, because even though you may be grieving in a completely different way, it doesn't mean you have to lose the bond that you guys have together.
I would agree with that wholeheartedly. I mean, Cindy and I are still together, and we've been together 47 years. And the thing that, I mean, I think the statistics are pretty staggering about marriages surviving the death of a child. I think it's less than 50% survive. And in our case, it was similar. I just knew I wasn't going to be able to fix it,
Yeah.
and that we just needed to go our separate ways. And I think what can doom a marriage is when you say, well, you're not doing it right, or, snap out of it, or, you should be farther along. Those aren't helpful observations, because, there's no one right way or wrong way to grieve. It's personal.
It is.
And it's just going to take its own course.
Well, and that's, I often say that grief is as individual as a fingerprint, because it's based on the depth of the love that you have with that person, what kind of relationship. Everything comes into play when you grieve someone, and I'm sure that you've heard, as I have, all of those wonderful tidbits of wisdom that people want to say, and
Mm.
I actually I applaud people who try to talk to me about it, because I remember being so surprised, and I'm not sure if you can relate to this, that some people, because they were just so uncomfortable and didn't know what to say, no fault of their own, and had not been in a situation where they were maybe guided in how to approach someone who's grieving, they just stopped talking to us.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. And I had I've had both of those things happen. People don't know what to say. They're uncomfortable. And so they, put the distance there. And then there are other people who they mean well. They really do. And I mean, there was one woman, I'd been away from CNN probably a month or so, and I was on the metro on the way back to work. I didn't know this person really well. And, she sat next to me on the train, and she said, "It's good to see that you've snapped out of it." And as soon as she said it, I saw the horror in her eyes. It's like, that's not what I meant.
yeah.
And, I said, I know that I haven't snapped out of it, but thank you. And then when I got to work, one of the writers I worked with, I'm probably going to cry. She got up, she came around, she said, "I'm a word person and I don't have any words." And she gave me a hug. I
Ah,
mean, that's the
that's
that's the right
beautiful.
response. You don't have to say anything.
Yeah, you don't. Oh my God, that's so beautiful. I might cry.
You're right.
It's so beautiful when people, they know that you're hurting and they're not afraid to step into that space.
Yeah.
I think that's so courageous, especially for people who haven't really experienced a significant loss of their own, to be able to step into the space.
Yeah.
Um, let's talk about the healing power of storytelling. So tell me what you think about people telling their stories and how it can heal them.
I love these open-ended questions. Use both sides of the page if necessary, right? I think the essence of storytelling, good storytelling, is relationships. It's characters that are real, dealing with life. They're in situations, they're in they're in settings and situations. That's life. That's a good story. And As a writer, you are trying to make a setting and a situation come alive for the reader. And that then means that you have to dig into your own experience and your own life. And often it's what I'm discovering, and it's an evolutionary process. It's it's not a left-brained, oh, I wonder how I can make this really interesting. It's more of an organic, seat of the pants, automatic writing,
Mhm.
spooky experience. I like to plan and I like to have an idea of where I'm going, but more often than not, I'm not as thorough a planner as I thought I was. And so I have to kind of make things up as I'm going along. And so if I can get the characters talking to each other, that gives me hope. And the way I describe it is that writing, it's like dipping a straw into your subconscious. And the act of asking questions, the what if questions. Well, what if this happened? Or who are you and why do you want to be in my novel? And then you just listen to the voice that shows up and transcribe it. That's like taking a sip and it comes through your fingers and onto the page. And it's spooky. And if you get out of the way and let it flow and just ask questions and follow your curiosity, that will stir up all that stuff that's already inside you, just waiting for an opportunity to come out. So I think that's where the healing is, because it's taking you to, I don't know if I can explain it really well, but it's taking you to a different place that you wouldn't necessarily um, access with your own rational mind. It's a more transcendent
Mhm.
kind of thing, but it's therapeutic because it unlocks things. It's I suppose, if I were to make a bad comparison, it's sort of like when you're dreaming.
Right.
That's, you can't control your dreams, and to a certain extent you really can't control the voices that show up and need release. um, and that's I think that's sort of a cleansing kind of thing. I'll stop there, because I think if I try to go any farther with it, I'll butcher the whole idea.
That makes so much sense to me. And do you have any specific kind of rituals that you do if you're going to sit down and you're going to write? Do you have any routines or rituals that you do before you start?
I don't think so. I mean, I've found that I'm best writing in the early morning. um, I try to journal every day first thing, and there are no interruptions, and it's longhand. I think that there's something to be said for, the pen kind of slows your thinking down, because otherwise it's just trying to come out faster than it can. And it's more or less just looking back at the day before, a life observed. How did yesterday go? And it's more or less just the facts, but every now and then something comes up where I go, well, why did I say that, or why did I feel that? And then you're going deep again.
Mhm.
And so I think the ritual, if there is one, is just to write.
Yeah. I love that you journal in addition to your writing. I think that's because I journal as well, and I think it's such an important piece of my day. And I love writing with a pen. There's
Yeah.
and I read an article, and I'll have to dig it up and send it to you, but it talks about kind of the neural pathways of your brain, and when you are journaling and you are writing longhand, how those neural pathways are affected versus if you are just typing on a computer.
Hmm.
I thought it was very, and I believe that because there's things that I have written in my journal that I look back on months later and I'm like, yeah, I was stuck there for a long time
I've,
on that
I've,
thought.
I've also heard that it's not a bad idea to write with your opposite hand
Oh,
too. That kind of almost, that really forces, the brain to come up with new pathways.
hmm.
I wouldn't recommend doing it all the time, because then your journal will be illegible.
Yeah.
But And I have to honestly say I haven't tried it yet, but I've heard it's a good idea.
I'll have to give that a go too. Hey guys, Kelly here. I wanted to jump in and let you know that you can find out more about my work by visiting my website at kellybuckley.com, or you can find my books on Amazon. Okay, back to the episode. Let's talk about gratitude for a minute. So I'll just give you a little background. So when my son Stephen, and I love that both our Stevens are spelled with a PH, I have to say that again.
Yeah.
When my son Stephen passed, I knew quite early on that if I didn't start looking for gratitude in the little things that still remained, that I knew that I would be lost forever. And I can say that I felt like I was standing at the abyss and I was just about to fall right in. And so I started looking for little things to be grateful for. It did not change the pain of the loss at all,
Right.
but it did provide a small reprieve from the suffering. But I would be grateful for things like on that first day, I was grateful for the divers that searched for Stephen. I was grateful for Stephen's friends who were with him at the lake. And for 20 something year olds, it would have been so much easier for them to go home, but they stayed with us. I was very grateful for that. I was grateful for one of Stephen's really good friends. His mom came with waters and all this stuff. And she hugged just like my mother, who had died in 1991. And it was like I was getting a hug from my mom. It was just amazing. So that was like the worst day of my life, but I was still able to find those little pieces. Talk to me about how gratitude is a part of your life, or you and Cindy.
I won't even presume to speak for Cindy, but gratitude is definitely part of it. It's a more of an unconscious part, and you're asking the kinds of questions that make me articulate stuff that I don't usually articulate. And so I know that I'm grateful for a lot, and I know that I'm grateful in a mindful kind of way. And it really is little things, but those can be big.
Yeah.
It's not so much for me a conscious thing where it was a way to step away from the abyss, but I think that one of the things I've discovered in the last, I don't know, 5 years or so, is that we spend most of our lives regretting the past or fearing the future, and we're ineffective in the moment. And so I've learned to kind of cultivate that mindfulness, that presence, that the being more aware of your breath, which is really the life force when you think about it. And those can be transcendent moments. And when you think about it, if every moment is now, and so you can cultivate that peacefulness and that gratitude at any instant, and sustain it. It's not a fleeting kind of thing. It's something that you can really consciously cultivate, and that's one of the things that I've been discovering. And it's I guess you could say that in itself has been something I've been grateful for.
Yes, and do you find when I'm outside, if I'm looking around and I see something like flowers that my husband keeps alive because we don't even want to get into that, but I just don't have the talent. I grew up in Newfoundland. There wasn't a long growing season there, so I didn't have the lessons that he had. But when I'm out and I'm seeing a flower or I'm seeing a butterfly or something, and you're in the present moment. And so even if an instant before you were having a really tough day, in that present moment, you're okay. And
Yeah,
that's
that's it.
a little piece of reprieve, that little piece of magic that you need to kind of get you to the next day.
Yeah, I really do think, I mean, it's that easy.
Mhm.
Now, for some reason, we're living in a society, I mean, where anxiety is just rampant. I mean, there are all kinds of problems that people are having, and it's just, I ache, for people who are experiencing that. And I mean, it goes way beyond my ability to understand or address. I mean, a lot of it is a chemical imbalance and things like that. So I'm a big fan of therapy and psychoanalysis and things like that. I went through grief counseling,
Mhm.
and so that was life changing. It really helped stabilize me.
Yeah. And you're right. People are, it's just such a tumultuous time for humanity, and there is so much anxiety. I read an article about, it was basically it was talking about social media and how social media has just changed the landscape for who we are as people, because it has taken us away from our communities. We're supposed to be in small little groups and communities supporting each other, but now we're watching something that's across an ocean and we're not worried about our neighbor next door.
Right.
Um, and what are your thoughts on that?
Oh man, here we go again. I really do think that social media, I mean, look, social media is morally neutral. It's there. It's a technological ability that we have, and it's what we do with it that can cause the problems. It's a major purveyor of falsehoods. It's a major purveyor of information,
Mhm.
truthful, factual information. It's also a major contributor to mental illness, bullying, anxiety, all kinds of problems. Because why? Because it's in the hands of people,
Right.
and people are imperfect, and so there are a lot of problems, but it's a matter of how we navigate it and how we manage it. And so we can go in a lot of different directions there, but in and of itself, social media isn't the problem. It's the people who use it that are the problem.
Right. Yeah. Because I mean, I keep thinking about developing brains and my developing brain when I was maybe in high school. And would I have been able to navigate all of the information that kids these days have to navigate? It's just, it's overwhelming. I mean, we are very, we have a cutoff point for looking at our phones. We at my son, who he's living in England right now, he barely uses social media. He's They're jumping on a train on the weekends and they're exploring. He just,
Good for him.
he sees the value of that. And I wanted to get your take on it as someone who's been in media, because it's a very timely kind of topic.
Yeah, and I mean, look, it's also a connector. It can connect people as well. So, I'm not going to beat the drum, against social media, but I do talk a lot about how to use it responsibly.
Hmm.
And uh, and so, yeah, we need to be able to put our phones down, but I think it also kind of keeps us connected as well. It's that double-edged sword.
It is. Yes. Because I do like my FaceTime with my son on the
Yeah,
weekend.
exactly.
Yeah.
See?
So it is a double-edged sword. Talk to me about resilience now. And I talk about resilience, about building resilience through gratitude. What does resilience mean for you personally?
Well, I suppose a synonym would be stamina.
Hmm.
It's the ability, I think, to forge ahead in spite of the pain. Um, it's sort of emotional elasticity, maybe.
Hmm.
Um, I think I suppose, to make a comparison, it's sort of like that, the exercise band, or the where it gives you enough resistance, and the more you pull it and work with it, the stronger you can get
Mm-hmm.
muscularly, but you can also be, uh, as you navigate life's shoals, you can get stronger emotionally. So I think there's a certain resilience in facing life and living it, as opposed to letting it get the best of you. It's pushing back. It's, I think, pushing back against things,
Mm-hmm.
um, and not just rolling over. I don't know. Am I making sense?
That no,
Again,
that's I think that's a
I feel
beautiful
like I'm out on a limb again.
I think that's a beautiful way to describe it. Is pushing back. That's truly sometimes how it feels when when you are really struggling. Is you're trying to push back to get to a place of equilibrium for yourself. And sometimes it does feel like that struggle of pull and push. It's not easy.
No, oh no, not at all. But I think that's a sort of the definition of resilience, in my opinion.
Hmm. So, in terms of things, trauma that, you have faced or I have faced, and you look at people who've experienced deep trauma, and years later, when you talk to people, they will say to you that although I did not want this to happen, there were some gifts that came with this trauma, with this life lesson. What do you say about that?
I'm a big believer in silver linings. And the boy, there are a couple of things I can say about this. And you've probably experienced this too. Usually someone who's going through something like this fresh will ask, does it ever get better? Does time heal? And time does heal. I really do believe that. Time changes things for sure,
Mhm.
but um, it does get there is a silver lining. There are things that come your way that would there are doors that open that never would have, that you weren't even there at the time.
Mhm.
And I think you have to be open to, the possibilities. And it's hard at first. It's just we have tunnel vision in the moment. It's like the world is going on, and how can people laugh? How can there be anything worth living for? Because my life has just been turned upside down, and that's understandable. And it's going to be like that for days, weeks, months, maybe a year or more, even.
Mhm.
Um, but I think if we're at least open to change, open to new things, then those things do come along. And I guess I'll say one more thing and then I'll shut up. And that is that one of the things that has happened is that I think, and I'm not saying that this is why it happens, but I think that one of the byproducts of going through something like this is that you are then prepared to offer some sort of comfort and support to someone for whom this is a fresh experience. And so, one of the things that I find myself telling people from time to time is that, you're going through this now, but what's going to happen is you are, in a sense, you are preparing yourself to be a comfort to someone else. And that is not something that's easily understood in the moment, but I'm taking the long view here, because there will come a time where you're going to be well beyond the event, at least in terms of time. And that will give you some perspective that you will then be able to provide to someone who's going through it fresh.
That is so true. That it is very much tunnel vision. That's a perfect descriptor for it when you are early in your grief. And then it does take some time for you to see, okay, so my life fell apart, but this has kind of evolved into something where I am taking my lessons and I'm helping another person. I'm reaching out. But you do have to, it's about choice, right? I mean, that's life. It's about what choices you make.
Yeah, it really is. And um, one of the things that I've discovered, I interviewed Kubler-Ross way back in the day when she was unveiling the 5 stages of grief.
You did?
And one of the things that's happened since she died is that they've come up with a sixth stage, and that's finding meaning.
Yes.
And that makes a lot of sense to me because, boy, if there's anything meaningless, it's, the death of a loved one. It makes no sense. And often it doesn't make sense in the ways people die. And sometimes it's old age and, you deal with it. But, and yet it's still even hard then.
Mm-hmm.
But, there's so much meaninglessness in, especially when a person dies young.
Yeah.
Uh, and yet, um, there's that, um, finding meaning as you still try to navigate life. Um, and I think finding the meaning goes back to what you said about gratitude.
Mm-hmm. I like to call what I do. And one of the things that I love doing the most is when I get an email from a mom. And I love being in my pajamas, emailing that mom back. That to
Yeah.
me that would be more of what I see to be my purpose than anything, is that late night email, that mom who emails from her darkness. And so I respond because I've come out of the darkness and I have some light again. So I have the ability to do that.
How long would you say it took you to come out of the darkness?
Oh, well, it's like any forecast. The skies are blue and then they cloud over and there's storms. Um, I think for me, I started communicating with other moms about a year after Stephen had passed, but that wasn't in I'm helping you kind of way. That was just connecting mother to mother. I think it was probably 6 or 7 years before I would say that I was really doing something that was giving back. I launched an online group talking about social media. I did launch an online group in 2011, and I still have that. There's still a lot of people in there who talk about their situations in grief. Um, but it did take me a while. It took a bit of distance from it. Um, and I was a very young mom when I had Stephen, and so we kind of grew up together.
Mhm.
When I was in university, Stephen was in, so it was so it took me a while to get that distance to be able to
Did
see
you
it.
go through counseling?
Oh, I did. I went for a full year. It was so valuable. Our whole family did, and our younger son went on his own as well. And I'll never forget the first time we pulled up there. He was like, "I am not going in here." And I've told this story before. I have his permission. So he said, "I am not going in there." I said, "You are going in there." And so
You're such a mom.
he said, "Okay, I'll go this one time, but if I don't like it, I'm never coming back." And I said, "We'll talk about it when you get back to the car." So in he goes, and he came back out and he got in the car and he said, "I don't have to tell you anything that we talked about." And
That's right.
for a 12-year-old, that's a big thing, right? And I said, "You know what?
Huge.
You are right. You don't, because it's not about me. It's about you."
That's right.
And so he went for that first year too. And anybody who's out there listening, I highly recommend. you know, going and just because it's a lot to unpack and you just don't have what you need in your toolbox. Sometimes you just don't have it and you can't go to the hardware store to get it. You have to go and talk to someone who is an expert. And yeah, I think that's a big reason why our family we stuck together. We stayed focused on what we could do, and yeah,
Yeah, yeah, and when when we went through grief counseling at the Went Center for Loss and Healing in DC, and they wanted us to go through it separately, and that made a lot of sense. I didn't understand it at the time until you're going through it and you realize, geez, I got all this stuff. There's no time for Cindy to talk, and and so we both went through it separately, and that was, I think, again, another reason why we stuck together because we had someone we could really talk to, and there was a safe place. They weren't emotionally invested in you, and vice versa, and so it was you were free
yeah.
to say what you felt without feeling you were gonna wreck the marriage or something.
Yeah, it's so true. You do need a place where you can just let it all hang out. I mean, there's things that bubble up in grief too that you don't expect,
Right.
right? And you had an individual relationship with Stephen, and so did your wife. Same with me,
Exactly.
with our relationship. And they weren't the same. There was different facets to each relationship that made them special.
Yeah.
And so it's giving you your space to be able to talk about that. So
Right.
I have two more things I want to cover with you. One is about perspective because I'm listening to you. You said you like Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. I am in awe of you. I would have loved to be a fly on the wall when you chatted with her because it's just her life work is amazing. And I like you, I'm very happy to see that purpose piece added on. I think David Kessler played a big part in that.
Finding meaning. Yeah, finding meaning. He's the one who wrote the book. He worked with her, and then he wrote a book. Basically the sixth. I can't remember what the name of the book is, but it's
Yeah, the
Finding Meaning.
finding meaning.
I think that's the name of the book, actually, Finding Meaning.
Yeah, and I so respect him doing that and continuing the work. And he's a bereaved parent as well. And so that
Exactly.
I was just so impressed with how he was able to bring this forward. Um, but circling back to perspective, so you've interviewed presidents, Hollywood legends, you've had a very storied career, you've written these wonderful novels, and you've also had loss. We kind of opened up with this. I want to talk about perspective on life. So think about the 25-year-old John
Oh, geez.
and the perspective that you had then and the perspective that you have now as you look at life and what truly matters. What would you say to the 25-year-old John?
The 25-year-old John was starting to get it together, quite frankly. The real conversation should be with the 20-year-old John. The 25-year-old John had been in the army. He was, starting to get it together. Um, and I would say that, a lot of who I am now goes back to that 25-year-old person. The 20-year-old person was a mess. And and I think I would say to that person, geez, dude, just relax, don't be so afraid. Um, don't worry about what other people think. Find out who you really are and stick to it, and it'll all work out. Um, just be true to who you are and love the moment, cultivate the moment. That's what I would say.
That's good. Do you feel like your perspective, even since 2011, how has it shifted? in how you view life?
We talked about this already. I'm not as afraid anymore. I think there's just been more confidence or more fearlessness, and that's not the same as recklessness.
No.
Uh, um, there's still caution and things like that, but I'm much more willing to, you know, get into new situations uh, in which I'm not really sure of myself, or under past situations would not have wanted to go there. Um, so yeah, more confidence, definitely more confidence, which is one of those silver linings, right?
It is.
Uh, who knew?
Who knew? Yeah. It better prepares you to step into the unknown, because grief is really the unknown. I mean, it's when you find yourself on that path, you have no other choice but to become a bit fearless. Um,
Exactly. Yeah.
so to close out our chat, and I have to tell you, I have so thoroughly enjoyed chatting with you today.
Oh, same here.
It's been so wonderful. Um, for someone who's struggling through their own, if they are going through some sort of loss, what message of hope and encouragement would you share with them on their journey?
Take a breath.
Mm,
Take another one. Um, be patient. It's okay to cry a lot.
yeah,
Um, talk to other people. Um, take care of yourself. That's okay to take care of yourself. It's important to take care of yourself. It's not selfish. It's self-preservation.
it is.
Find those inner resources that you don't know you have. Um, it doesn't mean, being more religious. It doesn't mean praying more. It doesn't mean you have to become a different person. You already have whatever it takes to get through this.
Mm.
And it's just a matter of finding it. But in order to find it, you just have to be patient and mindful.
That's some really great advice. And thank you for such a thoughtful answer. Before we close out, uh, can you please share with our audience, because I know that they are going to want to go and see your books and find out more about you. Can you share? And we'll have it all in the show notes as well when this episode airs. But tell our audience how they can find you and your books.
Best way is to go to my website, which is my name.com, but that's tricky, so I'll spell it. It's johndedakis.com, John, D as in dog E, D as in dog A, KIS.com, johndedakis.com. It's got thumbnails of my books. It's got my upcoming writing classes. I'm a podcaster, so it's got a link to the interviews that I've done and have been interviewed. This will probably be on that as well. What else does it have? I'm doing more public speaking now on the issue of how to help people use writing as a way to deal with healing from grief. So there's a page devoted to my speaking and workshops. Yeah. So that would be the one-stop shopping, johndedakis.com. And it's got plenty of opportunities to get through to me by email as well.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that. When is your next writing workshop?
Oh man, I think there's one coming up in another week or so. I'm going to be in Nashville in mid to late August for the Killer Nashville Writers Conference, where I'll be on several panels, and I'm going to be doing some manuscript critiques. I'm going to be at BoucherCon in New Orleans the week after. That's a mystery reader and author conference, and there are several online classes that I'll be teaching throughout the year that I forget about. Go to my website.
You are a busy guy. I love it. I will. I think I'm going to go and look at your writing classes. Maybe I'll show up to one of your. I would love that.
That works for me.
John, thank you so much for being a guest. I really appreciate it. I think that you've touched on so many things that will help our audience today.
Thank you, Kelly. This has been wonderful. It's really been great talking with you.
Take care. Thank you for joining me today on Broken Beautiful Me. I hope you found today's episode inspiring and insightful. Remember, every scar tells a story, and every story has the power to heal. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform so you never miss an episode. Your support means the world to me, and it helps spread the message of hope and resilience to more people like us. Don't forget to leave a review and share this podcast with your friends and family. Together, we can create a community of strength and beauty in our brokenness. Until next time, stay strong, stay beautiful, and keep shining.